Alright guys, Saturday, July the 2nd, and as you can see I've got the Road King in the space where the Alpha used to occupy, and unfortunately it's not a good day today. The Road King's going away to a new owner as well. Seems like it's a bit of a fire sale with the Alpha and the Harley going, but in reality the Harley's got to go, not because I want it to go, but I'm having trouble riding it now. Some of you have been following the channel for a while probably knew that I was having some problems with my shoulders. Probably started developing about a year and a half ago, and I've since had a few doctor's visits and the diagnosis that I have torn rotator cuffs in both shoulders and pretty severe tendonitis in my right shoulder, so it makes it extremely difficult to ride the bike with any pleasure anyway. So I've made the decision that the bike has to go away. I'm going to continue treatments for my shoulders in the hopes one day that I might be able to get another bike. But it doesn't make sense keeping this one around if I can't ride it. And I only got out on it about 6 times last year. This year I've only been out on it once. And I don't expect that I'll be able to ride it much more again this summer based on my work schedule and other projects. So I think it's the right time to let it go. So I've got the new owner picking it up today at about 1 o'clock this afternoon. So we're just doing a final detail on it. Got her hooked up to the trickle charger, making sure everything's good, getting everything together for him, all the spare parts that I have, the spare set of wheels, the windscreen, etc. I've started putting parts out here against the trailer for pickup. So there's the original wheels and the windscreen, and I've got a solo seat and a bunch of other stuff, back rack, back seat rest, etc, etc. So like I said, I'll be sad to see this go, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So this one is on its way out of the garage in a matter of a couple of hours, and I'll be sad for the rest of the day. Alright guys, welcome back to the Tush Mahal. Tush coming at you. It's Wednesday evening out in the garage. Nice night to be out here, so I thought I'd come and tinker on the 60 TR3A a little bit. After my trip from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, I need to do a little bit of maintenance. I actually lost a temperature gauge. Actually, before I left, I had realized that I had a problem with my temperature gauge when I was doing a test run before putting it in the trailer. And I guess when I was cleaning under the engine bay here, I must have hooked this temperature gauge lead, and I pulled it right out of the actual bung. So I have a major problem now. So if you don't know, these are not mechanical gauges on the TR3s. They are actually cables that are filled, I believe, with ether. And once you let that ether out of the cable, you're pretty much toast. Your gauge will not work. I do have a spare gauge from my 59 TR3A over here somewhere, and it is not in the greatest of shape. It's pretty darn rusty, but who knows, it might still work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get the sending unit out of the thermostat housing, and we're going to hook this guy up and see if it actually works. And if it does work, I think we'll install this temporarily while we get this one rebuilt. Alright, there's the broken off sending unit, and you can see all the ether has escaped from this end, so this will need to go out to be repaired along with the gauge after we figure out whether this old gauge is actually going to work. We've actually got it plugged in here. Managed to save, I think, most of the coolant. We did a quick exchange. So we're going to fire the car up and see if this actually registers before we even attempt to clean it up. So pretty dainty little thing, and of course if it does work, then I got to worry about snaking it through the bulkhead up through behind the dash and into its spot here on the center cluster. So that can be fun as well. So pretty dainty, fiddly job, but one that I've got to do if I want to get this car out this weekend and the following weekend. So there's a show this weekend, or a trip this weekend that I'd like to go to called the Leaksdale Loop. And then the show the following weekend, there's a show called Brits in the Park in Lindsay, Ontario. So I'm trying to get the car ready to go for that. And I definitely want a functioning temperature gauge if we're going on fairly long drives with it. I think the Lindsay show, it's about an hour and a half drive each way. So we want to make sure that the car is up to snuff before we attempt the run. Alright, we'll let the TR3 run and see if it comes up to temperature okay. And we'll keep an eye on the gauge. See if our fan kicks in when it should. It's on its own thermostat up here. So anyway, let's get it warmed up and up to temperature. Well, actually it looks like this gauge is working. Not the prettiest thing, but let's see if it gets up to temperature where it turns the fan on. That usually comes on at about 185, so we've got a little bit to go first. Alright, if this is registering correctly, the fan should just about be kicking on pretty soon. So let's see what happens. Maybe a few more degrees. There we go. Fan is on. Can't actually believe that this thing actually works. So hopefully it'll work after we get it installed. That's the real ticket to success, is once you get it installed and then you don't wiggle it or touch it. Alright, so that's working apparently. So what I'll do is I'll uninstall it. We'll get it cleaned up, then we'll run it through the bulkhead and up to the gauge cluster as mentioned, and we'll get under the dash there and do a little bit of routing of that wire, being very careful not to break it or crimp it. So good, that will get me out of a bit of a jam, at least for the next little while, until I can get the other gauge rebuilt. There's only a few rebuilders that can do these as well. And they're usually done on exchange, so I'll need to send my old gauge to whoever is rebuilding the new gauge, or wherever I'm getting the new gauge from, we'll have to rebuild my core. Anyway, alright, see how that fan shuts off. So I have a Wizard radiator with a Spal fan here. I have it on automatic on the thermostat. I also have a manual switch underneath the dash if I just want to turn it on and keep it on. So it seems to work really well in this car. I do have a steering rack conversion in this car, so that necessitated the removal of the mechanical fan for clearance. So we're only running with the electric fan on this car. It's actually a puller fan, so it's actually mounted on this side of the radiator, pulling air through. Should be shutting off momentarily, I would expect. Go. So the fan just shut off again. Alright, so we'll let the car cool down, and then we will remove the gauge and we'll do a little bit of work on it to clean it up after the car is cooled down. So this might be a project actually for tomorrow now, since the car has got to cool before I can actually get that bung back out of the thermostat housing. Otherwise we're going to have a bit of a volcanic eruption. Alright, that's it for now. Alright, we got the old gauge successfully uninstalled. It's fairly easy. It helps to have smaller hands than I, but I can work a little bit blindfolded, as I've done this a few times behind the dash, so I kind of know where the little screws are, and you can see them here on the back of the gauge. You just need to undo those two screws for it to be able to pop out. You can, in a pinch, if you can't get to that gauge at the bottom, you can pop out that whole panel. There's 4 wing nuts, 2 at the bottom and 2 at the top, that hold that center panel in. It's very difficult to get to the ones at the top with my big hand, so it was a little easier for me just to try and get the gauge out by itself. So that's out, and what we'll probably do is take the glass and the bezel from this gauge, transfer it over to the other gauge, and clean up the face and the needle of the other gauge carefully before we reinstall that in this car. And as always, I should mention, if you're working behind the dash, make sure that you have the power off. There's a lot of wires that can sort of touch and short back there. So in particular, that line for the temperature gauge runs very closely to the back of the starter switch and the wiring there, so you don't want to touch and short anything. So always a good idea to have a battery cutoff switch when working on your car or when storing the car. So I've got a simple green switch here. I just turn the knob off. When we're doing anything electrical, that's a good idea. Just make sure you turn the power off and you'll have less issues in the long run. Alright, it's the next day and we're picking up where we left off. I have done a little bit of pre-work. I did manage to take the old gauge apart and clean it up. Clean the glass and the chrome bezel a little bit, and painted the dial, And I think it looks a little bit better. We'll show you a bit better view once it's in the car, but it's probably 100% better than it was. Also painted the cable a little bit with some spray paint just to make it look a little less rusty. This will be under the dash, so you won't see it. So we're just about to feed it back through the dash opening, and I put a little garbage bag down here on the carpet because that paint's still a little bit tacky, and I don't want it to stick to the carpet. So I'm going to stick it through, back through the opening in the center cluster there, and then we're going to feed the cable back through out into the engine bay through the grommet there. So obviously the trick here is not to break the cable or it's game over. So we'll do best we can, and we'll try to do this patiently, and we'll take our time trying to do that. It's going to be more difficult to get in than it was to get out. Here's the bracket that holds the gauge in. This is going to be a little bit tricky because there's limited space under there. So we'll play around with that, I'm sure, a little bit, and get a little bit frustrated, but pretty sure we can do that. So we'll give that a shot in the next couple of minutes. Maybe another few minutes to dry, and then we'll try to stick it in there. New temperature gauge is installed, and we run the cabling the best we can. It's usually coiled there, I think more vertically, but we'll just do it like that. I think this is going to be a temporary solution anyway until we get the other gauge rebuilt. Hopefully this will work in the meantime. So we've got that there, and the gauge doesn't look too bad now that it's cleaned up. It definitely, the chrome's not so good around the bottom, but it cleaned up not too bad as far as the face is concerned. So I guess the only thing we can do now is test it to make sure it works. So let's fire the car up and bring it up to temperature. Cross your fingers. I always find it amazing when 60-year-old plus mechanical things still work. So it's coming up to temperature, and gone through one cycle already, and it seems to be registering nicely. The fan just came on once, so we're just waiting for that to come up to about 185 for the fan to kick in again, but it seems to be registering well, so happy with that. I've just refilled the coolant up, and I lost a little bit when I removed that plug that was holding the sensor in, so I think all is going to be good for the weekend and the following weekend. So now I'm thinking I might do one more project, and that is to put my new valve cover on that I won at the live auction at the Triumph Register of America meet. So I believe I have another gasket for that. That's a silicone gasket on this one. I think I have a cork gasket, but we might try to utilize the silicone gasket that's on here. However, I think that might be glued to the bottom of this cover. So I actually might even have another silicone gasket if I'm honest. So I think maybe we'll go look for that and see if we can put the new cover on. I'm just happy that it's actually working with the new temperature gauge, or the new used temperature gauge. So I'm wondering whether I should just stop here and not try to make it look pretty. Anyway, fan should be coming on in a minute. It's coming up to 185, as you can see. So this should kick in a few seconds, I would think. Alright. So that's working perfectly. Alright, we'll shut her down for now, let it cool down, and I'll think about converting that valve cover over to the new one. Alright, no time like the present, I guess. We are going to go ahead and swap out the valve cover that I have on the car, which is, there's nothing wrong with it aesthetically. It looks good. It works well with this car. I do have another TR3, a 59 TR3 that this cover could go on, or also have a TR62 TR4 that I could use this cover for. So it's not like I'm going to have an excess of parts. However, I did always want an Offenhauser valve cover, and I did manage to pick one up at the TR3A show as mentioned. I did go through my part stash, and I did find a stock cork gasket that seems to fit really well on this cover. I also found a silicone gasket, which I thought I had. It does not work as well. It's a little bit too big for this cover, so the cork gasket looks like it fits pretty well. There's a little channel, and there's sort of little keepers that keep this cork gasket in the groove, so we're going to go ahead and use that. So it comes with the mounting studs. Now, since I've got the other alloy cover on there, I don't think I'll have to use these studs. I will use the washers and nuts, however, and I also have a nice cap for the cover as well. So let's get the old one uninstalled. So here's your final look of the old one, and you can tell me which one you prefer. I really like the Offenhauser. They're hard to get. You don't see them very often, versus this one, which is a nice cover, but it's not as nice as the Offenhauser. But again, not everybody likes the style of the Offenhauser, so let's do a before and after. So there's your before. Let me wander around to the other side so you can have a quick look of it from the other side of the engine bay. Wander around here. So there you go. So let's get that off of there and we'll exchange it out with the Offenhauser. Alright, the old cover is off, and I am having to change out the studs. So there's the old studs to hold the old alloy cover, and they are significantly shorter than the ones that are supplied with the new cover. So we're just exchanging those out. So we'll twist the new ones in, and then we'll install the cover and see what it looks like. The cover is on. I did have one small issue with the little sealing washers that go on the studs. They're a little bit too tight, and I was trying to ream them out with a little step drill. I could make them work, but I need to ream them more. So anyway, in the meantime, I just went and used some copper washers. I have a copper washer kit, a sorted copper washer kit, so I just put copper washers on there. I'm sure those will be fine. Anyway, we're just going to fit the cap now, so we just dug that out. So here's the cap that I won. This was sold actually separately from the valve cover, so I wanted to make sure I won both lots when I was bidding. So I can't remember how much the cap was. I think the cap was 20 bucks alone. And let's see what this looks like when it's fitted. It's a nice looking cap. Alright, oil cap's installed, and I think it looks great. So I really like it. I'm not sure if it's your cup of tea, but I'm quite happy to have it installed on this car. Let's have a look at it from the opposite side. And again, you might prefer the stock valve cover. You might prefer the old alloy cover. Regardless, you do what you want with your car, and I will do what I want with mine. So I think it looks fantastic. So that's it. I think we'll wrap this project up. Only thing to do is to test it out, make sure we have no leaks. With that new cork gasket, we'll make sure there's no leaks through those fastener locations where I put the copper washers. And again, I may need to go back and ream those rubber washers out a little bit and utilize those. But in the meantime, I think that looks good. I think we'll take it for a bit of a run tomorrow and do a test drive to make sure everything is working as it should. And we'll get ready for the ride on Saturday.